TNA fam, you know we're back here again to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans on the Impact Zone podcast. We are here to talk about Sacrifice again, and well, for I think the second week in a row and the second month in a row, they've not built any matches to be on paper. So this isn't very good. Like this, and I said this last time. I'm sick of talking about it too. Because there's not much to say in some ways as well. Like they didn't do anything. Like they're still threading some of these stories. That's cool, but like friggin' hell, just announce what you're gonna do, some of what you're gonna do, anything, because for frick's sake. Again, like I know that there are tickets that are being sold to this event, and I know it's still like 3 weeks away or something like that, or whatever it is. I think it is something. Where are we? Yes, March 27th. So when, where, when, who, where, when, where. So it's literally a month away, I guess. But still, like, this is what I mean. Like, you should already have everything set up so everyone knows, right, again, this is what we're gonna see. This is what it's all building to. What are we here to see? We're here to see this. What is it? You know, like, that's it. Right, cool, great. You know, they've got some live tapings, I think, or a live episode this next week, I believe, on March 5th. Then they've got tapings on the 6th. And that's going to have to be for what? That's going to have to... Where are we? Look out. I just had it. 5th. So that's going to have to be for 1, 2, 3 weeks. 3 weeks of TV. So I assume, like, well, that means that, like, again, they haven't actually put together, you know, anything now. Because the next, there's no spoilers to be saying, hey, you know, this is what the main event's going to be until the 5th or until the 6th, basically. Yeah. But again, even then, again, like I say this again and again and again and again, even if you've got to wait to announce some things, you've got to announce at least something. Tickets don't sell themselves just because you're coming to a city. I mean, some of the TV episodes do, but that's because they're in front of like 1,000 people or something. You know, like, that's a very small crowd to have to fill out, you know. Whereas the pay-per-views, or even these minor pay-per-views, are in front of like 3,000 people. At least. That's double the audience at least. So it's not as easy to get people to come along to these events. Especially when you don't advertise. Like, advertising, we're coming to the city, isn't enough advertising. You know, especially for a pay-per-view. You know, for TV, yes, you could get away with that. But even then, you're having your guys and your girls and whatever else, you know, do stuff out there and do interviews and do stuff on like TV shows and radio shows and all this other stuff and whatnot, hyping things up, media tours, etc., all this other stuff. So you still do that for some of these like TV episodes as well. So expecting that you're just gonna get people to turn up without, like, and maybe like a 2-week build, like a proper 2-week build of saying, right, this is what we're gonna see, this is when we're gonna see it, right, you know. It is nice for stories to happen naturally, but you need to be like, right, this is the direction. This is where we're going. Not, oh, we don't know, or whatever else it is, or whatever. We've got to know. That's it. We've got to know what the direction is. What is the direction, right? This is the direction. Okay, cool, great. And maybe they haven't made that decision. I don't know. Hopefully they have. They should have. If it was me, that would be like my first thing of saying, right, the first week, what's the first match that we can announce? As quickly as possible. To get people to be going, okay, cool, this is what we're going to see. This is one of the matches. Okay, going to have to wait a few more weeks for some of the other matches or whatever. That's fine. But, at least you can say, okay, what's this one match or two matches, whatever it is, for a little while. So at least you've got that to be like, okay, you can see where something's going very easily. But then again, it's like saying, well, when and where and what is going to happen specifically? Like, you're obviously building something between, like, Macklin and Santana, and I don't know whether Santana or I don't know whether Macklin, I suppose, is technically under contract. I don't know really. It's very interesting, and that's cool and that's good in some ways. I actually like that because it's like, it forces you to be like, but wait, wait a minute. It feels very CM Punk, in his Ring of Honor days or whatever it was, I think, and back in his WWE days again, when he was like, I think it was like basically a decade later as well. I think it was when he was like the champion, but he wasn't really like under contract and all this other stuff or whatever. All that stuff, shenanigans were going on. But yeah, I think that's interesting, and like I feel like it has to be at a major pay-per-view. It has to be somewhere major. It can't just be on one of the B pay-per-views or whatever you want to call them, the monthly special pay-per-views, whatever you want to call them. So it has to be at one of the big 4 pay-per-views. Maybe one of the, like, I think they're still trying to make one of the other pay-per-views like a bigger pay-per-view. So it might be Big 5, whatever. But, like, whatever it is, as long as it's like a big show that you've actually spent time and energy and effort building to. And that's what you're doing. You're starting to build this big story between Macklin and Santana. I don't know. I kind of feel like Macklin will win. I don't know, but like, I said this before. I think I said this before. Anyway, I said that you might want to be like, okay, Macklin comes this close, like, whispers close to beating Santana, but he doesn't quite get the job done or something else, but Santana's so hurt and so out of it and whatever else. And then either Nick Nemeth or Eddie Edwards come out with their, activate at any time, opportunity, basically, to beat, Santana. And I don't know, I said it before where I was like, kind of thinking you've got a long way to go or whatever to get to like some of these things. So I don't know. You just got a long way to go with it. You know what I mean? Like once you think like you've took the belt off Santana, like again, like if you take it off of him at Rebellion, like realistically he's just won it, and that's in April, so it's only had like a 4-month run. as champion. Like, you don't want the title to feel too... Like, you want the title to feel like it is up for grabs, and it's not just like, oh, no, I'm not going to lose it for ages or whatever else it is. And you want to listen to the crowd and be like, yeah, well, we had plans, but the crowd, we've got to listen to the crowd. So it doesn't matter what our plans were. Our plans are now whatever the crowd wants, because they're, and I get people say, oh, well, it'll elicit emotion. Yeah, it'll elicit emotion of people being like, fuck you, don't screw around with us, don't, not promise us something, but you feel like you're being promised something at times, And sometimes people can accept, certain things, but at other times they will go, no, that's not right, and tell you to your face, hey, no, this is what we wanted. You should have just given it to us and then moved on and work your story out from there. Instead of like, we now have to go with our story that we were going to go with. Or, make some other twists and turns in the story. I think that the Nick Nemeth title run, the world title run, wasn't very good, honestly. I think it was cool to see him as champion for a little while, but I really don't think it was necessary, and I don't really think it was good. Like, I think it would have been so much better having a heel Josh Alexander world champion, because that's the direct person that, Hendry needed his revenge against, and you're kind of giving this pseudo heel stuff vibe with Nick Nemeth being with John JBL and all this other stuff. So the crowd is torn to an extent before they get to wrestle, but then you start doing this JBL stuff, which, okay, cool. Maybe you start saying, well, we don't really know, but, if you've seen Nick Nemeth even on the indies, or even heard about him with JBL on the indies, it's like, well, wait a minute. This is not just, him coming out there and him doing stuff. It's like, oh, well, he's entering with you. He's coming out on the entrance with you. There's an implied level of not just trust, but understanding there of saying, yep, we're together. Even if you don't know exactly what your partner or whatever, or your associate or whatever is going to do, you're partly responsible for it. If you're going to associate it with a backstabber or whatever else it was, like that sort of thing, it feels like you're guilty by association. You continue to associate with this person despite knowing, hey, well, they screwed this person over, or they screwed that person over, or whatever else it was. So now you're complicit, sort of thing. You're agreeing with it, whatever it is. If they're like, and I know they probably were trying to work it out, something or whatever it was, but still, it was like, I think it was like, maybe it was because it was like, oh, we don't really know what we've got here yet, and we're trying to do this thing. You should have just said, this is what we're doing. No, that's it. This is the angle. Nick Nemeth is now a heel. Okay? Like, at this point. Like, no. You've got one of the biggest baby faces that you've had in ages, and he needs a big heel to go up against. And, like, if you're not willing to turn Nick Nemeth heel, which I don't know why you're not willing to turn him heel, but whatever. If you're not willing to turn him heel, then freaking put the belt on Josh Alexander. He's a bigger heel at that point, And then Josh Alexander can still wrestle Nick Nemeth, and Nick Nemeth can stay a babyface and can have those matches with Josh Alexander. And, eventually Joe Hendry comes along and finally gets to the point where it's like he gets his opportunity, and he's been, kept away from it for months and months and months and months and all this other stuff, and he finally wins. That's how you should have done it. Like, in my opinion, again, it just makes more sense because the narrative is between the person that screwed him over, the biggest heel, and the biggest babyface. You know what I mean? It's not now between some guy that has been a babyface and has had this other stuff going. Yes, I get that there's more intrigue in that, being like, oh, what the hell is JBL doing here, or whatever, or having like question marks around like whether Nick Nemeth is a good guy or a bad guy or whatever else, or he knows what's going on or he condones what's going on, and that sort of thing. You can sort of have a little bit more chatter about that to an extent, but like, and I said before, like, or I was saying before, like, nuance is good, but like sometimes you just need to be like, no, we need a bad guy for our good guy to defeat. That's it. That's what we need. We don't need this convoluted, complex, is Nick Nemeth a babyface? Is he a heel? Is he working with JBL? Isn't he working with JBL? La 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 la, all this other stuff. You could have, like, that could have been somewhere, anywhere, at any point, whatever. You could have done something with that, or something there at some point. But it didn't need to be, there. Like, or you could have had JBL come in and Josh Alexander. Like, you could have done that same thing and been like, let's just do it with the biggest heel or whatever that we've got anyway. Like, so again, like, and JBL has been known to be a big heel for a long time. So again, you're saying, I mean, maybe, I don't know, is he like doing this stuff to be, and then he later became kind of babyface, kind of. But then it's like, again, when you've got, and maybe this is because the plans fell through, but like, none of that led to anything. And I think somewhere JBL recently said, hey, it was going to lead to a match, or it was going to lead to something, him returning in ring, whatever. So there was going to be like an in-ring payoff of some sort, I think. But it's just, again, when it's like, this is like a guy that's basically known to be retired, it's like, oh, okay, well, what's going on here? Why would we do this unless there's already that, like, he's gonna get something out of it, some comeuppance or something, or whatever else it is. Or, again, no, we're not just painting it. Like, maybe you shouldn't paint it so simply sometimes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, people wanted to cheer Joe Hendry. People didn't really care. Like, they liked Nick Nemeth, and they were enjoying what he was doing, and they thought that it was cool to see him there in TNA and doing stuff and whatever else and all that other stuff. But, like, they didn't really care because they were like, you're yesterday's news for the most part. It is nice that you're getting a moment now, but he could have had a moment by being a challenger again and been like in the fray and in the hunt and then been pushing some of the newer guys further up, and further down, like, instead of, or further into people's mind of being like, even if you think like Nick Nemeth is a jobber or whatever else it is, or a main event jobber or whatever else it is, and that sort of thing. Maybe this is part of the tapestry of the story that you're actually telling, where it's like, he couldn't get the job done again, and he couldn't get the job done again, and all of this other stuff, and then eventually he's had enough of not being able to get the job done, and that's what sort of leads him to turning heel later, properly turning heel later, and wrestling with his brother and all of that stuff as a tag team. So again, like, I don't know, but yeah, like again, like obviously this is where we're going with Santana and Macklin. But yeah, like some of the rest of it, like some of it, I do feel like maybe you're building to like a fatal 4-way or a fatal 5-way or something like that, or a 6-woman, challenge of some sort. Maybe like you could do Ultimate X for the women's title. I don't know. Maybe like why not? Why not? Like, but again, like certainly you get those things to come together, and it's like I said before, are you building to something like in a singles realm between Ash and between Mickie James, or is that now going to be part of this like I think it is. I think it's going to be a singles thing. But I've seen people saying, "Hey, it's just to build up the match that they're going to have, this 5-way, 6-way thing that they're going to do, because they're going to have Lang Lee, they're going to have Dani Luna, they're going to have Ariana Grace, and who else? I can't remember who else now. I know it was somebody else, and man, my brain is melting somewhat. It was another babyface, wasn't it? I don't remember. Yeah. But I said before as well, like, if you're doing like I said, I think this is obvious too, but if you're doing a singles thing between Ash and between Mickie, then it's like Ash needs that win way more than Mickie does. Mickie is a legend, lover, and, all of that stuff. But again, it's like, she doesn't need to do anything. She doesn't need to achieve anything more. She's done pretty well everything, and she's a Hall of Famer. So again, like, what would beating Ash by elegance do for her? Nothing. Won't do a single thing for her. People will still see her as an absolute legend. Maybe they'll be like, oh, maybe she's on the comeback tour, or maybe she'll challenge for the for the women's world title. Maybe, like, that could be put into people's minds, or whatever else it is. But again, like, why would you do that? Why would you cut Ash's legs off from underneath her? Like, maybe if you say, oh, well, it was really close, or whatever else it was, and then they have another match, and then Ash wins, or something like that. That might be a bit more. Like, that's a bit more different. Like, if she wins the feud, not just like the battle, but she wins the war, so to speak. Like, that's different. But I'm saying, like, if, Mickie came back and she just beats Ash left, right, and center, and then it's like, oh, okay, and then she leaves again. It's like, well, what did that do for anyone? That didn't do anything for anyone. Because like, especially if, like, Mickey's just going to leave again, which is what I'm assuming. She's only here for a short stint, or whatever else it is. Maybe, but I don't know. Like, I don't see her sticking around, honestly. I think that like, WWE has mostly got her under wraps for the most part. Like, she's like very heavily involved in LFG. For WWE, and a lot of like backstage stuff over there in WWE, and like Nick is over there in WWE and all of that stuff too. So like, she's very much entrenched in WWE, but I feel like her coming back is something noteworthy, because again, it's just like, that's cool to see for people and whatnot. And having a match between her and Ash at a big event, like, that's another thing that I feel like it really needs to be at Rebellion. It can't just be at one of the next, like, minor B shows or whatever, or even on TV. You've, like, and maybe, like, it's crazy for me to think that you're building some of these things so far out because they're in April. You know what I mean? Like, but that's good if you're building something that far out. But again, now I would expect it to be like way, way less. We won't see any of it for maybe even a month more. Maybe we'll see little things here or little things there or whatever else it is. But realistically, we won't see a whole lot for another few weeks, at least. Like, because at some point, like, it's like, well, what more can we do? And at a certain point, like, this doesn't need that much build or whatever. It's Ash, it's Mickey, it's one-on-one, some sort of match, whatever it is. I don't really care. I don't think the fans really care. I think they just want to see Mickey and want to see her wrestle and do stuff. But ultimately, I do think fans understand, oh yeah, this, like, that's maybe where, like, some of the, not animosity or whatever, but some of it comes from. It's like, we know you're just bringing her back to lose effectively to Ash to help put her over. But then again, like, people are like, oh, well, we like Ash and we want to see good things from Ash in the future. And again, it's like a stopgap sort of thing to be like, oh, okay, well, we can't put her in the title picture right now or whatever else it is, because we've already got so many other things going on in the title picture. But yeah, we want to keep her doing things along the way until, like, the point at which we can put her back in the title picture or whatever. Because again, like, as well, like, I think they're probably as well a little bit hesitant because of her injuries and whatnot. And I think she's still seemingly recovering. Like, in that tag team match that they recently had, she didn't really do a whole lot. Not she didn't do anything, but she didn't do a lot. So she worked kind of smart there to be like, just doing the things that she needed to do to make sure she's on track or whatever else it is. And she did, like, some of the things that she did do work that were there. Like, most of it was like fairly minor stuff, fairly like low impact stuff for the most part. Like a couple of like DDTs or whatever else it was. Like, I think that was like the most impactful thing that she did in these encounters thus far. So again, yeah, I think, like, she's still a little bit kind of like hesitant or whatever else you want to say, or whatever, or still a little bit tender or whatever else it is, and not really sure whether she can take, like, too many big bumps or whatever else it was. Like, before, it felt like she had a lot of more confidence to do things or whatever else it was, or maybe abandon to do things. And perhaps, like, this injury has made her, like, a little bit like, oh, maybe I make sure I just keep myself to doing the bigger stuff at the bigger times when it's really needed, because, hey, if I'm hurting, if I hurt myself too much, then this is taken away from me, and I don't want that. I want to be, able to decide for myself when I close this chapter on my career or whatever else it is. So that's fair enough. I 100% understand it. I'm not knocking it or whatever else it is, or maybe like the first night jitters or whatever else it is, especially since it's like, hey, I've been out with this injury for this long and whatever else it is. So it's like, oh yeah, well, you're going to forgive me for being a bit jittery or whatever else it is, and not being like, oh, well, I'll just jump off the top of the thing and whatever. The men's tag, I want to move on now, but the men's tag team scene feels a little weird, honestly. Like, you've got, like, I think next week you've got this upcoming, like, tag team like tournament match where you've got, I think, 4 teams where it's like they're all vying for the number 1 contendership. So I feel like the system and wasn't Order 4. Who was it else that beat them like a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was? No, it was Order 4. So it's like, I don't think Order 4 is honestly going to get anything out of them beating the Hardys or whatever it is, because like it seems like that's kind of just been forgotten about or been passed over on, which sucks because those, like, you know, I don't know about Hotch. I think Hotch has, you know, got a lot of potential, but I like Skylar for the most part. He's a good hand, obviously, but still, like, the joke is there, obviously, so I've got to take it. But yeah, like, again, it does feel like it's going to be the system. And it does feel like a lot of the other teams that are kind of in this match are just not death fodder, but they're just fodder for everyone else kind of thing. And maybe they're just like, oh yeah, they're here. We've got to have a division. We can't just have 2 people in the division. But yeah, obviously, like, there's only really 2 or 3 people or whatever, 2 teams, 3 teams, whatever, in the division for the most part. Yeah. Because again, like, only a couple of people can be the real stars of the show, so to speak. But it does suck a little bit to be like, hey, why did we go through or do that if it was just gonna, you know, turn to nothing or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know about it, because it's just like, where are we going, guys? I mean, you can't just have the system like at Sacrifice. Like, I feel like that's got to be at like Rebellion too. You know what I mean? So, and again, I hate the idea that they're just gonna have some like other like tag team match with Santana or something like that, or whatever else it is. You know, I don't know. Like, next week, I think they've got Leon Slater versus Nick Nemeth for the X Division title. What? I think that that's a dumb decision in some ways. Like, really. Like, you're either gonna make Leon lose and lose the X Division title, or you're gonna be like, you know, Nick Nemeth loses to Leon. And I know, like, Leon's beaten a few former world champions, and that's sort of the subtext of a story that you're trying to tell, of like, hey, he's beaten, you know, like, and if you're paying attention, you know, he's beaten this former world champion, then that former world champion, and that former world champion. Wait a minute. There's a pattern emerging here. But then again, it's like, well, in a way, it's like, well, it's not just to say Leon will cash in or whatever, or Leon will be world champion. It's just another way of building him up. But it's also another thing of saying, well, there just happens to be a lot of former world champions in TNA as well. But again, you know, yeah, it's one of those things of saying, you know, I don't think it's a good thing, because why would you beat Leon unless he's like out the door or something like that? I don't know. Which I certainly hope he isn't. But like, people have been saying that since like for ages, you know. Since he appeared like first in WWE. being a TNA contracted wrestler, basically. They were saying, oh, he'll be in WWE next week or whatever, like, consistently. He won't be in TNA anymore and all this, whatever. But, yeah, WWE are clearly interested. You know. So, but still, you know, we're looking forward to, like, seeing, like, Leon develop and grow and become, like, one of the stars of tomorrow. So you should, like, he shouldn't lose, because that will, like, especially he shouldn't lose the title, especially not to Nick Nemeth. So that doesn't make, like, that wouldn't make any sense to me. And then it's like, why would Leon beat Nick Nemeth? Like, again, you know what I mean? Like, it's just bad for both of them, because you're trying to encapsulate this idea that Nick Nemeth is the main event level guy. And I know the idea here in some ways is to be like, you know, showcasing Leon to be like that next main event level guy or whatever, but you've got to, like, before that, realistically before that, or maybe you can do it after, but it really hurts somebody's legitimacy in some ways. But then again, then you could start saying, well, if Nick Nemeth beats Santana, then Leon's like, hey man, I beat you only, like, last week or whatever it was, or whatever, you know, last night or whatever it was, you know, or last Sunday you know, or whatever, or last Thursday, whatever it was, or, you know, a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was, you know, like, and then it's like he gets his chance at some point. So I'll be coming for that world title soon, once Santana's got his rematch. You know, or whatever, that sort of thing. You know, like, that, is that what you're doing? Like, you know, but I feel like heels should have some level of credibility, not none. And it feel like, yes, saying, hey, he lost to this guy before or whatever in a tag team match, that's a bit different than a singles match, you know. So you can always wash away, you know, these singles or these tag team matches, like, say, oh, well, that was a tag team match, that's, you know, that's a bit different, you know, and all of that. So it wasn't really one-on-one, you know, like, so you can defend yourself a little bit in that. Yeah, I just don't understand that. That's the one I'm like, what are you doing here? You know. And of course, it's like the women's tag team titles, they're not really, they don't exist. So just forget that they exist, guys. Just, like, be surprised that they have a match on Sunday, or don't be surprised they have a match, just a random match on Sunday or whatever, and be like, oh yeah, there's no build to this match at all. It's just a match. It's just there or whatever. There hardly ever is, like, build to anything with those titles. Like, at least, like, the Elegance brand, or, like, they've got a lot going for them, and they're the best thing in the division, obviously. So if they weren't the champions, they would be very quickly the champions. So yeah, but I don't know. I still feel like you're building something between Mace Warner and AJ Francis. So yeah, I kind of want to see Francis get the better of this in some ways, honestly, right now. But I don't know, because it's a tough position to be in, because, like, I don't know when and where and what and how and why or whatever you're gonna try to do some of these things. or whatever, or you're trying to push some of these people into that main event scene, or trying to do stuff with them, or whatever else it is. Like, why are we trying to do this? Why are we trying to do what is the goal here? What is, whatever it is. It's like is the goal to put the belt on Macklin? Is the goal, like, and this is a good problem to have sometimes. Like, now it feels like there's a lot of good main event players, like, and that's good, but you need to be like, okay, so how do we like thread this through, keep people interested enough in something, but like not like quote unquote piss them off or turn them off of watching. That's the thing. Like, if you're gonna say, hey, he's gonna lose the belt, or Santana's gonna lose the belt again in the next couple of months or whatever it is, to whomever because of briefcase shenanigans or because of some other shenanigans, people are gonna be like, bro, why are we doing this again? Like, type thing. But people might be okay with it if they feel like, Santana had a fairly decent run or whatever, or at least like it might be okay to be like, oh, but he's probably going to win it back at some point or whatever else it is. So I don't know. That's the problem with like baby faces as well. It's like, it's super easy in some ways for fans to, like, when they actually care, for people to be like care to a little bit too much, or they're too like blinded by the goal in a way, by saying, well, the only thing, again, this is the people's problem. The only thing that matters is the world title. Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter that he's having these great matches or having these great feuds or whatever else it is. Yeah, that's cool and all or whatever, I think, for people. But they don't care. They're just like, if he's not in the world title picture, we don't care. Like, type thing. That's what a lot of people's problem is. It's just like, they only care about main eventers. Like, again, and that's like, again, another problem of like, sometimes it feels like the company only cares about the main eventers because, well, what can they do? They have to care about the main eventers because they're the ones that draw the tickets. And it's like, if the fans aren't really vibing or aren't really into people doing other things or whatever, it's like, well, why are we doing them? Like, it's never really worked out. It's never really been a thing of people really digging all this stuff, because like, people just want to see people in the main event, and that's it. Like, if you're not in the main event, that's it. Like, we don't care anymore, or they feel like the company doesn't care anymore or whatever. And I talked about some of this like in like a video that I was doing there a while about, like, true elevation. Like, once you get to that main event scene, you've got to be firmly established into that main event scene. You can't just fall out of it and disappear, but you've got to slowly transition away from it, because again, you can't be the main eventer all the time, and you need to let new people come up into that main event. And this is why, like, sometimes it's good that TNA, not that it's a complete revolving door, but it is somewhat more of a revolving door. So you never get bored. You never get like, things are too stagnant or whatever else it is or whatnot. People are too entrenched in this scene in some ways or whatever. Like, Eddie Edwards maybe is a little bit, but he really hasn't had that many main events for a while. So it feels like going back to it feels a little bit more like, oh, okay, we haven't seen this for a while. We're going to see some of this stuff again or whatever. And yeah, this is what we're going to do, or this is where we're going or whatever, all that stuff. So like, I think people can understand. And I think, again, this is what people have to understand. I was talking about some of this in like the the mid card title discussion that we had a little while ago or whatever. That the thing is, you've got to have other things for people to do. You can't just have one main event scene. That doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense for everyone to be in the main event scene or whatever. You can't have everyone in the main event scene. Everyone's, got to be doing something. But if they're not doing something with the champion, then they've got to make it matter, because it's like, why would fans care about this, since it's not, like the for the main event title, for the main title of the division or whatever else it is. It's like, okay, why are we seeing these young guys here? Are they gonna win? Are they gonna go anywhere? Are they gonna do anything? Or whatever it is. Or are we just seeing the same old guys again and again and again? And I know people like seeing some of the same old guys, they like seeing the Hardys and things like that. But at a certain point, it's like, dude, enough with seeing the Hardys or seeing these guys that have done the same thing for the last 30 years, whatever it is. It's ridiculous. So it's like, yeah, I understand, people's enjoyment of things, and people being like, oh, well, we can enjoy this or whatever else it is or whatever, but to me or whatever, or to some of those other people, it's like, well, I can't, or they won't, because it's like, well, it's crazy, because I think people are very conflicted in some ways in what they want, and maybe that's different people's being like, oh no, I want this, but I want that, or whatever else it is, where it's people want the Hardys to be a big deal, which they are, but they also want the Hardys to kind of be the main event guys. I don't want them to be the main event guys. They're already basically the main event guys in the tag team scene. But also they're they can't do it forever. And like I said, the act to me is over. It's gotten too old, and they even 10 years ago when they first did the Broken Hardys stuff, they knew that. They knew that the act had gotten old and needed a refresh. So they were like, okay, what's something else that we can kind of do to refresh what we're doing? Give it a fresh coat of paint or whatever. And they did the Broken Universe stuff. So, and that was a decade ago, back in 2015, 2016, or over a decade ago. So again, you're to say that you were passe or getting passe a decade ago was like, oh yeah, wow, and even then, when you talk about them as a unit or whatever, maybe there's a time and a place for them to be a young tag team, and then be like, oh, we'll go our separate ways or whatever, and then we'll become single stars, we'll be mid-card stars, then we'll be main event stars or whatever. And then when we're winding down our career, hey, we'll be tag team stars again, or whatever else it is, or whatnot, something else or whatever, and we'll do that. And the Hardys are pretty iconography in wrestling. But yeah, they're one of the most iconic tag teams that are out there, I guess. At least in the modern day. So it's hard for me to be no one's on their level in terms of star power, in terms of any of that other stuff. But in terms of ability in the ring, or, facial expressions or selling or anything like that, I think there are a lot of people that are on their level and even above their level, especially now. In terms of physicality, absolutely. But in terms of
maybe selling, or maybe some of the other stuff, or maybe subtleties of promo or timing or whatever else it is. Some of that other stuff, maybe they've got something, but like not enough for me to be like a big fan anymore. I suppose I'm no longer a fan because it's like, nah, man. I'd rather see you guys retired at this point, basically, and having or being somebody's manager or doing something else, because you guys, cannot go and be the stars that you were. You need to let the other guys go out there and be the stars that they can be. You know, I think the Righteous, and it does feel like maybe there's something still to come between the Hardys and the Righteous. Um, but I feel like the Righteous are almost like the Hardys 2.0 in some ways. Almost, kind of. That's kind of the vibe that you're trying to pitch here. Like Dutch, though he's a lot bigger than Matt, he's more Matt than anything else, obviously, and Vincent is much more Jeff. He's much more the high flyer, and Dutch is much more of the power and the big man game and all of that stuff. And I said before, I said like I wanted to see like the Hardys and the Righteous, like I wanted to see the Righteous beat the Hardys. But if you're like the Hardys are going to lose at some point and they're not going to get their titles back, and then they're going to sail off into the distance or whatever else it is, and then like they're going to say to the Righteous, or the Righteous are going to say to them, or whatever, we'll win those titles back for you, or whatever. Maybe even the Hardys are going to retire soon. Like I think that the Hardys, they wanted to retire in WWE, but I think WWE doesn't have, like, I think they had some level of interest for a little while there at some point, especially when they gave them the NXT titles. But I don't think that they're that interested now or anymore. And it's really weird. Like, there's this really weird situation going on, and I said this before with Jericho. Like, people were expecting Jericho to be at the Rumble. I think that people are like finding out that Jericho's contract is still like active or whatever with AEW because of like injury dates or just dates off or whatever else it was. So the contract's gone on further and all of this other stuff. So it's like, yeah, you're out there doing this sort of stuff and whatever for a few, and then for a few years it's like, oh, or for a few months or whatever it is, radio silence for a while, and then it's like finally, here he is, he's back or whatever it is. And I said like, and there's been a lot of discussion of him being, I think this is like a thing that Jericho does is very smart about doing. He's trying to get people to be like speculating about what he's doing and where he's going and why he's going there or whatever else and all this sort of stuff, to also get the people that are like, hey, we'll bring you in and we'll give you a contract. And wait a minute, all these people are talking about Chris Jericho coming to TNA. Wait a minute, or whatever it is. Or maybe going back to AEW or whatever it is. So now, wait a minute, we really want Jericho or whatever it is, and we really want him from this program or that program or whatever it is. Or even if we really don't really want him, or at least this is WWE now, but even if we really don't really want him all that much, we just don't want AEW to have him. Like that's where I think AEW and WWE are both at. Like I've said this before as well. I was like, WWE and AEW feel like they're both like just hoarding talent just because they don't want the other company to be like, hey, we'll take them and we'll actually do something with them maybe. But neither of them really can do that because they've just got so many guys and they're already not using all the guys that they got. So it's like, yeah, you're not going to, because you, like I said, you're not even using the guys you got, let alone some other guy that's going to come. Yeah, you might argue, well, that guy is a lot bigger and has a bigger name, so it's a lot easier to do stuff with them. Well, you know, you've got to pair them up with some of these younger guys, because again, their shelf life isn't very long. And even like the Righteous, I say this about them, their shelf life isn't that long either. They're in their mid 30s or 40s, I think, or something like that. You know, um, so how much longer can they go? Same with like a lot of the guys that are in the system. I saw the documentary recently of JDCs, and a lot of those guys that are in that faction, like Brian Myers and all this, were like, I don't know when I'm going to retire, and all of this other stuff. Same with Eddie. Same with a lot of those guys that were like, oh, I don't know when I'm going to retire. I don't know when I'm going to hang up the boots or whatever. He's hanging up the boots now. It's crazy, like, and all this other stuff. But he's happy. And it's like a lot of this stuff, same thing kind of with AJ too. I want to talk about Styles just a little bit at least, because it's come up so goddamn much. Look, I am one of those people that I don't want AJ to be retired. I have hope that he'll come to TNA and have at least one more match. That's something that I do want to see. But if the dude's retired, the dude's retired. Like, that's it. Like, I won't hold out too much hope to think that he's gonna come back into the ring or whatever else it is at any time soon, at least. Maybe in the next few years he will. He said, hey, I might tag with my son if he comes into wrestling or whatever else it is and this sort of thing for a return match or whatever. But that's got to be while AJ is still fairly fit and healthy. I mean, he can keep himself fit and healthy to an extent, but like farther time comes along for everybody, and eventually you just can't do it anymore. Or you can't do it at the same level that you've done it at, or at the same proficiency. So again, like knowing, hey, it was kind of the right time to walk away from main level competition, like weekly competition, monthly competition, daily competition, whatever else it was. Maybe I'll come back for a match here or a match there or whatever else it is or something. That's cool. That's great, because like Foley did that kind of thing. Terry Funk was terrible for like retiring and then having like several matches after that, and then like retiring again, and then like having several matches after that, and all of this stuff. And like, what else? Ric Flair and so many other guys. Like, and I feel bad for Brett in some ways, because like he didn't get to end his career the way he kind of wanted to, or whatever else it was. But maybe it's a blessing in disguise, because we could be still sitting here talking about Brett being like, refusing to retire and all this other stuff or whatever. you know, I don't want people to be refusing to retire. I want people to realize, hey, man, I've got to find my way out. It's time to find my way out. Like, and that's where I'm like with like Myers, Edwards, all those guys, like Eric Young, all these guys. Like, dude, you've got to find your way out. Time to exit stage left. Or start worming your way towards that. Because again, like, what more can you do? And what more can your body take? And then it's going to be like, well, what? I know some of these, like, they said a lot with JDC, but they said a little bit here with some of the other guys. They were like, oh, I wouldn't know what I'd do with myself if I wasn't, a wrestler, and all of this. I think Myers said, I've never really had a, like, regular job, basically. I've only been in wrestling, basically. And I was like, that's crazy, dude. But that's the dedication sometimes that it takes of saying, yeah, but, that's the only way that I got to where I was at, because I was like, dedicated to it. I was there every week, whatever. Maybe I had some other stuff or whatever here and there on the side or whatever, like some people do or whatever. But like a lot of people are like, well, I don't want that. I don't care about that because it's like not the thing that I want to do, and it's just going to take time away from everything else that I'm going to do. But still, like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I think I've gotten rambling off the topic, but again, like, I do think it is relevant stuff to talk about at times, and like, I can only talk about them not announcing things for so long because it's like, what can I say? Again, guys, you've got to announce things, like, that's it. Even if it's barely anything. Okay, announce it, or bring somebody in. That's what I mean. Like, they need more women's tag teams, a lot more women's tag teams. They need a lot more X Division guys, and this sort of stuff. What else? They've got a lot of good main eventers now. They've got a fair few good tag teams as well, honestly, in the men's division. Although I do feel like Sinner and Saint are probably like the bottom of the barrel to an extent now. Maybe like the good hands or the great hands are still, but at least like the great hands are kind of on TV every week and they're part of a faction, so at least they get some time to be out there. Whereas like Sinner and Saint, they seem to just appear here and there, and like it doesn't feel like they're going anywhere. So I think, like I said, half of them have a lot of potential. One half of the team has a lot of potential, but the other half kind of, you're just kind of there. You're kind of there. And everyone's just I don't know whether waiting for a heel turn or waiting for something, but they're waiting for one of you to kind of, or the team to break up or whatever else it is, or just like they know that you guys are going to basically be the jobbers of the division effectively at a certain point. And then whatever happened to like the Andersons? Like, was that just for a 1 night, 2 night thing or whatever it was? Like, or was that just like a trial or whatever? So they weren't really coming in. They were just like, oh, we're here. Yep. Type thing. Maybe they had other offers or whatever. I don't know. Or maybe like they didn't think that they knew what they were going to do with them. I don't know. I said this a fair while ago about Danhausen. So I want to just touch on this briefly because I wanted to talk about it. Because there was a bit of talk about him going to WWE. Honestly, like I said, I don't know whether I said much about this, but I just don't think that he fits the WWE mold or the WWE vision. Like, from what I see that they're looking for, especially in the last like few years, which is like the best to kind of look at what they're kind of going for now, not like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. They're looking for guys that are either super realistic, like they're them with a lot of charisma and or whatever, like Joe Hendry, Ricky Saints, whatever else, Trick Williams. It's just them with the volume way, way up, and they have a lot of charisma. That's the kind of guy that they're looking for. That's who they are, basically, but the volume's way up. Or they're looking for, I don't want to say a stereotype, but like just like a full-on, like, sort of stereotypical gimmick. Like, he's the Italian guy. Hey, I'm the Italian guy, so I'm gonna wear an Italian hat and I'm gonna talk like an Italian. Hey, oh, hey. So that's what they've either had. They've either had like, they have like, and again, like you could say, oh, well, he could be the outlier. And because he's the outlier, he'll stand out. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing, though. You know what I mean? By him standing out. It makes him the special one where it's like, hey, he feels like a throwback to I don't know, more cartoony style wrestling. I don't want to say that too much about him because like he does have his own thing where he's not like just a full on, cartoon character or whatever else. I don't want to, pigeonhole him into doing that. And obviously, he doesn't really do that. But I just don't think that would be what they wanted to do with him. The gimmick that he's already playing isn't something that I don't think that they would want to do. I don't like it's a good thing and it's easy in some ways to market it in some ways because it was very marketable and he sold a lot of shirts and whatnot. It's more than CM Punk at one point, I think, from memory, or almost as much. And this was from like a guy that had, just debuted and just into the company, but people were like really into him and they really liked the way he presented himself and just the character in general and everything about it. But they never really did anything with him in AEW. Like, really, I don't even know how many matches he had in AEW. Like, or whatever. And he could have, like, and I don't know whether they knew what to do with him in AEW. Or how to tell the story of what to do with him in AEW, perhaps. And that's perhaps the same thing of WWE. I don't think that they would know, right, well, what sort of story can we tell with you? Like, or whatever. How can we, like, I'm sure they know how to market him, but I don't think that they know how to write for him, for that gimmick, because it's a very unique gimmick. And, it's a weird gimmick that I think has a fair amount of nuance and whatnot. Not to say that they can't get nuance, but a lot of the nuance has been taken out of, the storytelling in WWE. And I think like there never really has that. Like there has been nuance in AEW, but it's been so super nuanced that you've got to be basically watching every single show and had to have watched, every single show 10 years ago and 20 years ago and whatever else it was to get like where this is coming from or why this is. And there's no like recaps or like, this is how we got here or whatever for those people that either don't know or are just tuning in. It's like, oh, even if you've watched every week, it's like, you might be like, oh yeah, how did this happen again? Or like seeing those packages sometimes, like the cool thing about like, okay, that's cool to see the actual package and them, like Steve Austin, the My Way video. Everyone talks about that because it was so well done. Everyone had watched like week to week, month to month and knew how they got there, but it was still a really great package that was done very well and that, told a story in of itself. It helped elaborate the story that they were trying to tell. So, this is where we were going, and whatnot. So again, you've got these things going on and all this other stuff. And I do feel like he could be a fit in TNA. Like he could fit well in TNA. They've had a few wacky or off the wall or unique gimmicks that work and they've booked them well and been like, okay, let's go and take you and we'll give you something to do. And like, then we'll see, hey, was the crowd receptive to that? And, then see, okay, well, the crowd is pretty receptive to you. So how can we put you into the next level? But the thing is, I don't know if they want to do that. I think that they could see Danhausen as an asset, absolutely. And they might want him on their roster. But then again, it's like up to Danhausen too, and up to his agents and whatever else, all that other stuff. And it might take a while as well. He might be sitting there for a long time waiting for his like contract to expire or release or whatever else to occur. And like, I think that's like, maybe like they might even say, hey, we'll let you out of your contract early if you don't go to WWE or you don't go to TNA. And if you go to WWE, we'll sue you or whatever, that sort of thing. I think that's AEW's biggest fear, and that's the same for WWE. Their biggest fear is like, as soon as they release somebody or whatever else it is, they'll be like in AEW the next week or whatever it is, or within weeks or within months or whatever it is. It interests me to see that like Karrion Kross hasn't gone to AEW, or AEW hasn't really closed that deal there with him. So that's interesting for me, because it's like they surely they know, hey, well, people, you sort of strike while the iron's hot. Should have tried to get him as soon as he's released, or as soon as his no compete or whatever else was up, and say, hey, come and work for us, like we'll give you a chance or whatever. And yeah, but yeah, I do think that he would be better off in TNA, because at least like I think there's so like, even though the main event scene now is pretty solid, adding a few more people to it wouldn't hurt, obviously, I don't think. But like saying, hey, this is where we're at, and bringing him into WWE just to be like, oh yeah, he's here, and we don't really care, even if he's getting fairly good reactions or whatever else it is. But Powerhouse Hobbs is over there now, so it seems like they're at least interested in some people and in some things. But like again, they said like, oh, don't call us, we'll call you, like type thing, for a while, where it's like, and Soraya's been, or Paige or whatever, has been like out of contract for a long time, but she hasn't done anything, and they haven't brought her in. I'm like, that's weird. Like, surely you'd bring her in to do stuff, even if you're like, oh, we don't know about her being in ring. She wants to be in ring. At least bring her in and be like, hey, she's back, and then be like, hey, well, we don't know whether we'll get you cleared or whatever else. So, just come in. But she might be like, nah, I might as well wait till you actually clear me to come in and compete, rather than being like, oh, we don't know, and we don't know, and we don't, like, dragging the heels a little bit and just being like obstinate about it. Like they were kind of obstinate with Daniel Bryan for a while, being like, oh, we don't know, whatever. So you can't go out there and all of this. But yeah, I certainly feel like there's a lot going on, or a lot of potential going on as well. So yeah, I do feel like they could have a lot of great things for Rebellion. I said before, like, I felt like, man, we should run back the Ali Santana feud. And I'm like, why aren't we doing that? And it's like, now it feels like Ali and Elijah are kind of finished doing whatever, doing their feud in a way. But now it's like, oh, okay, well, what's Elijah going to do now? Or what, when is, Ali coming back? What's he going to do next? Sort of thing. And no one talks about like Tasha Steelz really, and the Great Hands all that much. Like, I talk about them here and there, but like, it's like you've got this program seemingly with Tasha and Jada Stone going on, and like, so where's that at? Like, but I mean, maybe that's going to be something while Ali's like on the shelf, or doing other dates, or whatever else is going on, or at least away for a little while to rehabilitate his character or whatever. After like, and I'd say it's a TV loss, so it's not that big of a loss, but still, it's like, you don't want people to feel like, oh man, you know, he's just, you know, gonna lose these things or whatever else it is. You want people to feel like, oh, you know, he could be, or he still is at that level or whatever. So you want to bring him back and be like, okay, let's do something big with you now, reestablish you, get you back into a position or whatever. But the feud, in some ways, like, I don't know how much it did for anyone, because like Ali, like, to an extent, was already like at that main event level kind of, and you know, you've got Elijah being like already at that main event level, and it's cool to be like, hey, we have this really cool feud and we have this really cool idea and we have this really cool story, but what did it really achieve? Who got more over, or who got more? I mean, like, again, you might look at it being like, well, no, it's not always having to have somebody come from step 3 to step 4 or whatever you want to call it, like getting a step up, literally. Sometimes you've got to have these matches between your step 4 guys or your step 5 guys or whatever you want to call it. You're basically nearly top level guys, but you're not quite top level guys. Because, hey, well, we need to build something else for each of them and give people something to watch on a weekly basis, but we also need to tell more stories and give like them something to do after this. Like, we can't just say, hey, that was it, we never see them again type thing, unless like we're literally never seeing them again. Then it's like, oh, okay, cool, right, well, why are we never seeing this person again? You know, oh, they're going to WWE. Oh, okay, cool. That's why, you know, like, or whatever it is, you know, like, this was like the reason for this or the reason for that or whatever. You know, we dropped this because of that. We did this because of that. You know, they didn't re-sign. You know, whatever it was. We didn't know what we were doing with them. Or they didn't know what they were doing. Or they hadn't made up their minds. But they made up their minds at some point. And now we're here, and you know, now they're no longer gonna be here, but now that they've decided to leave or whatever, now it's kind of, at this point, it's like, oh, well, now what can we do with them on the way literally out the door? They're literally just about to be out the door. So it's like, right, well, we can't do much. We had some plans, but now we've got to drop those plans. So what can we do with you for like 1-2 more like tapings or whatever else it was, or whatever else it is. So yeah, like, you got to figure those things out and say, oh, okay, well, it depends, because again, like, maybe we can help build somebody else off of this, but then again, it's like, well, people would already expect us to kind of do that to an extent, where like that's the tradition, whatever. But especially with people that have been there for a long time and done a lot of that, it's like, well, you know, you've pounded them into the ground already. So it's like, well, there's no further pounding for them to be had of this guy's, you know, been a jobber or been in this position for so long. Who cares? Everyone's like, oh yes, might have a decent match or whatever, but there's no believability because he has not, like, this person has not really won any matches. It's like, if they win a match, it's like shock horror. I was like, what? Wait, what? The guy who hasn't basically won any matches won a match? What the hell? You know, like, again, like, I do feel like you've got this whole thing going on, and you know, we've got to get there. We've just got to get some of this stuff on the board, you know, so people can be like, hey, okay, to their friend, hey, friend, tune in. Do you want to tune into TNA? And they're like, maybe. What's their show looking like? You know, oh well, this is what I mean. You've got like when you tell your friends, or when you tweet it on Facebook or whatever on Twitter or whatever, you know, people can actually talk about the matches. Like this is what and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks ahead. Like not just the night before or a week before or a couple of weeks before, where it's like, oh, man, they still haven't announced much for this show, and it's only in a couple weeks. Yeah, but there's some storyline stuff going on. That's great to see some storyline stuff going on, but it's like you need to be like saying what is selling the show, at least some of the stuff that is selling this show. Get to the point of saying, right, cool, we need to at least announce a couple things so people can be like, oh, okay, so this is what we're doing. And this is what I can tell my friend who doesn't really watch TNA or whatever else it is. Hey, you want to watch some TNA with me or whatever? Or this weekend they've got a good show coming up or whatever. Or whatnot. That sort of thing. Again, for people who don't watch it, it's like, maybe that, like, again, they're just given up. I don't know. But that's no way to run a promotion. If you're just like, if people tune in, they tune in, that's no way to run a promotion. That's a way to go under, like, at a certain point, yes, you can't do anything about, like, if people are going to tune in or not. But if you're not going out of your way to say, hey, this is what you're going to see, or promote the shows or whatever else it is, like, well, you're shooting yourself in the foot to be like, hey, we're not going to work hard to do anything because, hey, it hasn't done anything for us before, Not like our new TV deal should change that. Oh, wait, that's the whole point of why we got it, to try to make a difference in our attendances and into our, live events and things like that, And social media has always been there, and always, I suppose it will always be there in some form or some fashion. But yeah, again, that's where you're being like, oh, okay, cool. We've got to utilize this to get these things going to the next stage, so people, again, can pay their hard-earned money to come and see what we've got on this show. So, yeah, guys, apart from me rambling on for over an hour here, and having said, there wasn't much to talk about here in terms of the actual, like, show itself. There is, like, stuff going on, obviously, but it's just, like, not been announced, and that's the sticky wicket. Like, again, maybe you can argue, oh yeah, it's still a month away, so they've got a fair amount of time or whatever, and next week they'll probably announce at least some stuff. That's great, but they should have already done that. That's my point. Like, they should have already said, or they should have said, hey, it's another couple of weeks back, and been like, oh, okay, cool, now we've got to announce things now because now it's 4 weeks away, or now it's 3 weeks away, or whatever it is. So, and you already need to have announced everything by probably 2 weeks away, unless it's like literally the pre-show countdown matches or whatever else it is that don't really matter. Those are the only matches that I think you can say, oh yeah, they can be announced like the week before or the day of or whatever else it is. Other than that, you can't have, like, matches be like, to be announced, or whatever, or just nothing on there, or just, like, handful of matches. But, yeah. Anyway, guys, that is pretty much it. But remember, screw ICE, boycott all of the brands and people and things supporting Israel. Don't support genocide. Don't be a part of it. Just, it's working, so keep up at it. and hopefully we can come together at some point and live in a better world. That's what I'm hoping for. So, yeah, guys, hope you have a good one. Hope you tune in for another one.